interconnecting bus protocols within a chip. So all the number protocols, APB, AHP, and AXI, these three protocols, there are few other protocols like ATB. So these are the protocols that are being used for interconnecting the multiple IPs on a chip. All of them are on-chip protocols. We have different versions of APB like 2, 3, 4. Like we have AHP 2, 3, 5, AXI 3, 4, 4 Lite, and AXI 5. ATB also, like ATB, we have only one version, I think. Okay, so AMBA is all about like the on-chip protocols connecting the multiple IPs. Okay,
Yes, sir.
yeah. So like if we take an example, like we have a NOC or an interconnect. So if multiple masters and multiple slaves are connected, so let's say we have mixed bus. Like we have the AXI is there, which is connecting with the master. We also have the APB protocols or the AXI protocol, which is connecting with the slave. So the transaction can route from AXI to APB or with AXI to AXI, AXI to AHB. All the conversions are possible, but those conversions will happen within a bridge, NOC, or interconnect, whatever is there. Okay. So today we'll start with like the concepts of AXI, what is AXI, and what are the benefits, like what are the different features of AXI. So firstly, the AXI is like the bus protocol which have the multiple channels. We have the five different channels working in parallel. Five channels working, all of them are working in parallel. So which gives us the benefits of like reading and writing in parallel, which gives me the benefit of creating the outstanding transaction, give us the benefit of like out of order response and data interleaving. We have multiple benefits of the multiple channels working in parallel. Right, data interleaving. Okay, so we'll go through all the concepts of like these are the major topics that we need to cover, like what is the outstanding transaction, what is out of order responses, what is data interleaving, and how the five channels are working in parallel, what are the different signals. All of these things will go through in the AXI. Okay. Hmm.
वो एक साथ कोड में डेटा इंटरलिविंग नहीं होती ना सर, एक वर्ड से
एक से फोर में नहीं होती, थ्री में होती।
क्योंकि उसमें WID होता
पता था ये पता था सर ने बताया
Okay. So what are the different channels? First we have the write, write address, which is we denote the signal name with AW. Then we have the write data channel. Then we have the write response channel. So we denote the write data with W, write response with B. Then we have read address channel, AR, and read data channel. Okay, these are five channels we have in the AXI. All of them are working in parallel. There is no dependency, like there are dependency for sure, but data can be transmitted in parallel in all of them. Okay, things are clear till now. We have not explained. So what are the different signals? So first we'll pick the right address. What are the different signals? First we'll see. We have AW adder. Signal name बताओ. AWID.
length, size,
Length,
burst type,
size,
burst type, prod,
prod, log, user,
prod,
strobe.
strobe is there in address channel.
नहीं, sorry.
Hmm.
value,
Valid.
right,
So these all are the necessary signals in a address channel, and the same will be applicable for write read address channel. The same signals, set of signals are also there in a read address channel as well. Okay. I'm expecting some response. Everyone is there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Any questions on like how the what are the different channels? What signals are there? Anything?
I think it's okay, sir.
Okay. So what do you like? What we'll see like what are the different like uses of these signals? Okay. So firstly, like addresses, basically we are just we consider a clock, let's say a clock, correct? So we have a clock. So let's say we have generated a address as V1. So there can be multiple address which is generated on the AR adder. It can be any possible address you want to request. Now, what is AWID? Like for every request we are generating, for every address, the master will generate a particular ID. So ID will be specific to your request. It can be a unique number for every request, or it can also be repetitive. Like we can have also the same IDs for all the different addresses. Okay. So, okay, so first we'll start with this ready and valid. So these two signals are there in all the channels. In all the five channels, we have a ready valid handshake. Like we have W valid, W ready, we have B valid, B ready. So what this ready valid actually means, I'm just deleting all this, huh? So how a ready and valid handshake will happen. So let's say we have a clock. Okay, we have a valid over here, we have a ready over here, and we have a address. Now I have generated a address A1 at this positive of clock. Okay, so whenever a master is asserting a address, it is generating a request, it will assert it's valid along with the address, which which is telling us a valid request has been generated on a bus. So this valid will be generated by our master. This is address is also generated by our master. Now ready is controlled by the slave. Okay, so there are many possibilities. Now we'll consider what will happen when a ready is, let's say, when a ready is always high state. From the zeroth clock, ready is in a higher state. So whenever both the valid and ready are being asserted along with the request, so at this posage of clock, we'll consider a request has been sampled. Okay.
Okay, sir.
So what other scenario can be there? Is-
And ready after valid.
बड़ा किस- इसमें हो जाएगा वही तो। हाँ वो माउस से तो हो जाता है इसमें नहीं हो रहा so now let's say that by default a ready is low. Okay, let's say the slave is not ready to accept a transaction and it is getting low for multiple cycles. So what will happen?
The valid need to keep assert until
Sorry?
the valid signal need to keep assert
Yes, the
and
valid will keep
the thread,
asserted. Mhm.
yeah, the thread need to keep stable with that value until ready is assert.
Yes. So until the ready is getting asserted, the valid keep high. So whenever the ready, let's say on this posage of clock, whenever the ready gets high, on the next clock, it will sample the request. And also this address bus is also continued along with the valid. No other transaction can be changed on this address bus. Along with the address, all the other control signals like burst, length, prot, size that we have seen, all the signals will keep retain their value on the bus until this ready valid handshake will happen. Okay. So now there is a clause in the protocol. Whenever a valid being asserted for an address, we cannot deassert the valid until the ready is high. So there is no possibility if a master has asserted a valid, it is not being sampled by the slave. It must be sampled by the slave whenever the ready gets high. Okay. You understand what I said, like what is the clause? Okay. So this ready valid handshake is same for all the channels, and it is must like we must understand what is like the handshake happen and at what clock our request, our data, whatever, all the signals are being sampled. So now whenever this ready valid is there, so at like at this posage, the valid gets low because this our request has been sampled, so the valid can go low. Now at this point, a different address A2 will start. For that, it will keep the ready, keep the valid high for a particular transaction. जो भी request है for a particular beat, only for that वो high रहेगा. Once the ready valid handshake is completed, वो next request it will like see for the next request. Valid, huh? But ready can be high. Like ready is not being controlled. It is the slave dependent. It can keep the ready high for throughout the simulation. Ready is always high to take the transactions. But valid can be high only when the master is requesting some address or some data or response. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, sir.
Yeah, like please ask the questions in case you feel any in between you can interrupt any questions. Okay.
like एक एड्रेस भेज रहे हैं
Loud थोड़ी.
like we're sending one address A1, right? So the A1 address, if ready and valid both are high, the A1 address can retain the value for multiple clocks, or does it have to change?
If, no. Like you're saying, if the ready is high at this point, so only at this positive clock the address gets sampled, and the valid gets low. So after that, we don't consider the address bus. What happens on the address bus?
No, if the ready and valid are both high,
Huh.
then do we have to change the A1? The other, like the address should be changed on the next clock, or can it be changed?
It will be retained.
If both are high, then
both
Like-
are high, so change no.
Nee,
Ready valid both are
at this
high.
posage, address is start driven. Okay, the valid is high, ready is high. Request is sampled, completed on this next posage of clock. Now valid gets low. Valid must get low because the request has been completed.
but
Okay, if the new request has been generated at this point, if a new address A2 is starting, then it can be asserted for one more clock. If there is no more request by the master, it must get low. And the address will keep A1 over here until and unless new request is generated.
So only if multiple requests is lined up,
Hmm.
then only the in that case the valid will be high, continuously high. Otherwise, after every
Every
transaction,
request,
it should
valid
be low.
should get low.
Like if we are using some burst transaction,
Hmm.
like multiple writes are coming,
Outstanding
write data.
back-to-back transactions.
Yeah, like multiple write data are coming. So
This is about, okay, multiple write data, okay.
but like we usually send single address, right? And it will increment on its own. The slave will increment on its own, right? So at that time also, like, do we have to change the address?
No. Address तो हमारा address channel पे only one time it will send the address, one time only.
For one burst.
For one burst.
Then the data will come and it will remain valid, will be reset.
So first mean is now all transaction or particular beat transaction. First mean.
वो अभी आगे. हाँ तो क्या करेगा?
मतलब जो वैलिड होगा वो 0 हो जाएगा हमारा, बट डेटा चलता
For
burst.
like this is for the AW channel. Now we have the, okay, we'll see what happens with W valid and W ready, W data. Okay, so like we have a question like what happened with the write data channel. Okay, so like we know in the AXI we have a concept like we only send the starting address for a particular burst. So this A1 is only the starting address where we want to write. Okay, now it's the responsibility of slave for further increment the address and store the data. Now how that like how the data will be started. Now let's say at this positive of clock our D1 is starting, at the next D2 is there, then at the next we have the D3. We have only, let's say, 4 beats and D4. Now on every clock we are getting the data, so that means the ready is high and valid is also high throughout. And at the last beat, when all the data is completed, valid can go low. Ready, again, it can be high or low. It is optional depending on the slave. Okay, there is no restriction on ready, like it should be high by default or low. There will be no restriction on ready.
Actually, first difference between this ready valid of address and data, like there will be any dependency.
There is no dependency on that.
So address will be sent just once, and the address is ready, and valid will get low, and then the data will start coming, and it will not be dependent on that. We see the valid in the address channel and the write channel will go high at the same time, right? And the ready will also go high at the same time.
Means it's independent. but
Independent.
It will
It
be
is
on the
possible.
table. Right.
Okay, so any questions on ready valid handshaking? Any doubts? Nam, Viet, man.
No, I don't have.
Okay. Okay, so next thing we can new we will start. Ready, valid, handshake, first. Okay, so now
Excuse me,
we'll
sir.
see. Like we have
Excuse me, sir.
three.
Hello.
Yes,
Sir, between valid and ready, which signal has to be all-time high during the transaction?
there is no dependency like what signal can be high throughout the transaction. It's all dependent on like valid should assert only when a request is there. When a valid data, when a valid address, read address, write address, a valid response is generated, at that time only the valid should be high. But ready is independent. It can be high throughout the simulation, throughout the clock. It can be any random. So slave can randomly control the ready signal. It can be assert, deassert. But whenever the handshake is there, will will confirm that valid transaction has happened on the interface.
Okay, sir. Clear, sir. Thank you.
Now in the request, we'll see we have seen we have AW size, AW burst, and AW length. We have these three signals. These are the these are the most important we have to cover and we have to understand. Okay. So how these are interconnected? All the calculation will happen with the size, length, and burst. So first we'll go through like what are the different type of burst in the AXI. We have three different types. Like first is a fixed, second
Increment.
increment burst type, and a wrap burst type. So anyone know about what is a fixed burst type?
Address is fixed
Okay, before this, I just want to tell what's a difference in a burst and a beat. There's sometimes there is a confusion what's a burst and a what is a beat. So I'll open a XLS. I think that will be better. This sheet is visible to you.
Yeah, visible, sir.
Yeah. So just consider one cell as a clock. Okay. This is one clock. This is other clock. So that will make, I think, better understanding. Burst. have W data. I'm taking the major signals. Now let's say we have a A1 address. For that, burst type is, let's say, INCR. Size is 2, length is 3. So this is the, let's say, ready valid is high throughout the time. Okay, this is a valid request being generated on the address channel. Now over here, I'm sending the data D1, D2, D3, D4. And this is the response of A1. This is a complete, we can say this is the write is happening in this way. Like we have generated an address request. The data is coming on of 4 beats and a response is there. Like these 3 different channels, that's how a basic request is, a basic write transaction will happen. So what will happen? This D1, D2, D3, D4, these we call as beats. This is beat 1, beat 2, beat 3, and this is beat 4. And this complete from start to end, this complete request will say it as a burst. This is complete burst. If we have to generate a request of burst INCR or a wrap, we'll say it as a burst. And the beat means a particular data beat. How many beats are there correspond to how many data is sending. Like if we have the multiple data D5, D6, we can say we have 6 beats in a burst. Okay.
It's all transfer, no? All beat transfer.
All complete transaction. A complete transaction we'll call it a burst. A particular data we call it a beat. So this D1 has its own ready valid handshake. All the D1, D2, D3, this all the beats will have their own ready and valid handshaking. Team, yeah.
Our W last signal
Hmm.
will be asserted on D6
Yes,
or after D6. D6, right?
only on D6.
Okay. And the response will come 1 clock after D6.
Like what different are there on write data? W last,
So
stroke, and
WID,
Evaluate.
WID.
beats.
so how like now the question is when all the channels are independent, how they are being interconnected. Yes. So we have this ID signal in all the channels. If you see, we have AWID on address channel, WID on data channel, and BID on response channel. So for a particular burst, this ID will be same for all the 3 channels. So whenever a D1 data is there, so how it will corresponding to this address that we control using the ID. So whenever the data is being driven, it has the same ID as the address. beat is itself a particular ready valid handshaking is happen na?
Yes, but